How much control should the players have over the campaign world in D&D? I want to talk about it today on Greyhawk Grognard. Before we get going, just a reminder that this video is a collaboration I'm doing with Glenn Welch, Joe the Lawyer, and Eric Tankar. Glenn is our fourth wheel for the month of February, so if you're watching my videos on their channels, please do like and subscribe to mine. And if you're watching any of their videos on my channel, please do the same for them. That said, let's get going. Now, it's important when we're having this kind of discussion that we really define what we're talking about because there are so many things that are adjacent to this question. And what I'm talking about specifically is player uh, agency over narrative, not just player agency in general, because player agency is not inherently bad. I mean, all players have at least character and uh, agency, right? You choose what your character does, and if you're playing with a good dungeon master, game master, then you will have meaningful choices to make. So you'll know, at least you'll have some idea of what's going to happen if you choose A versus B. You know, there's clues and stuff. Or if it's a purely adventure designed to be an exploration game, then that is the point. You're supposed to be making blind choices, and eventually enough blind choices will allow you to make informed choices later on. That is the nature of exploration: is finding out what is out there and reacting to it appropriately. That's not what we're talking about. And even in a more combat oriented game, you have players have character agency over tactical decisions. What monster do they attack first? Do they use this weapon or that weapon? Do they move here or there? They have plenty of agency. So agency itself is not inherently bad. Where we get into the problem is when a player demands agency over the setting or the narrative, because in Dungeons and Dragons, at least, that is the prerogative of the game master, of the dungeon master, is to design the setting, is to set up either the various locations and events that are happening and NPCs in a more sandboxy environment, or to set up the overall story and the story beats that are going to happen and create. You can go as far as creating decision trees and all that good stuff to have scaffolding to accommodate different player reactions to different things. We talked about that with Tracy Hickman yesterday, at least yesterday when I'm recording this. But what I'm talking about is when players demand the right to change the environment and change what happens to their characters. So the genesis of this topic for the four of us for this month was somebody had mentioned that. I think it was Professor DM mentioned there was a character, a player who requested that their character not die. I get too emotionally invested. I don't want my character to ever die. And if it was me, I'd be saying, you're playing the wrong game. You want to play Fiasco, or you want to play Life with Master, or you want to play something along those lines. So that deliberately gives player agency over narrative. And for me, somebody who likes an exploration game, story derives from it's an emergent property that derives from the player's choices for his character as they interact with the other players' choices for their characters, and as the DM responds and makes decisions for all the NPCs in the world. That out of all those interactions comes the story. As opposed to a game like Fiasco, where the narrative control by design of the game shifts from me to you to you to you to you and back to me, and it just keeps going around like that. Or a game like 1001, was it 1001 Nights, where narrative authority, narrative control, the role of the narrator is dependent on what happens in the game. So if a certain thing happens, then narrative control shifts to another person. It's emergent from the story that comes out from the game, and the game is designed to do that. So what we get into problems with, though, is in a game like Dungeons and Dragons, which is not designed for that. It is in fact designed for the opposite model, where you have the players who control characters, and they are in a semi-adversarial role against the dungeon master, who controls all the NPCs in the world. And that is a very different model. And if you want to play something where you as a player have agency and control over the narrative, then you should be playing Life with Master or Dogs in the Vineyard or something like that, which is designed around that. I'm sure there are more examples of fantasy, of swords and sorcery kind of games that have that, which I just am not familiar with because it's not what I like to do. It's not what I like to play, so I don't know a lot of them. I know the bigger names. So, for example, this is what we see this mostly in is in players who create their own backstories. And if I create a really detailed, you've heard the cliche, the 10-page backstory for a first level character, and they're an exiled prince, and they this and then that. But what they're doing in the process of writing up those 10 pages of backstory is they are defining parts of the campaign world. And I don't want, if I'm a game master and somebody hands this to me and says, this is my character's backstory, I don't want them to get to define my campaign world. It is, in fact, my campaign world. And unless they're using the biggest, broadest strokes, for example, if we're playing a Greyhawk thing, then saying my character comes from Verbabank. Okay, fine. That's no problem at all. That is vague enough that you're not actually taking control of any setting material for your own little backstory. But if you say my character is the son of the Lord Mayor of Verbabank, and is a bastard son of the Viscount of Verbabank, and he had an affair with the Lord Mayor's daughter, and he was exiled, and all, then you're starting to add layers of history in Verbabank that might not jive with what I have planned for Verbabank. Or might not jive with what I have in the future planned for Verbabank, or it might not vibe with what I have planned for your character in the future. You're in a campaign. You're playing in a game where the role of holding the reins over that level of campaign background and campaign lore, the setting agency belongs exclusively to the game master. Now, the players can influence the setting through the actions of their characters. That's how it's supposed to work. That is how story emerges from play. Is you make decisions and the game master makes decisions, and together those decisions culminate in story. But if you just arbitrarily say the Viscount of Verbabank had a bastard son, and that bastard son ran away with the daughter of the Lord Mayor, you are establishing history and you're establishing relationships between NPCs that is the prerogative of the game master. And I think that's the problem with it. If you want to play a game that does that, there are plenty out there, as I've mentioned. There are a gazillion games out there that will do that for you, that will let you share the narrative control, that will let you design your own little piece of the world and so forth. And you should feel free to play those. But if I and 4 other people are coming to the table expecting to play a game of Dungeons and Dragons, in which the assumption is that campaign agency is an exclusive prerogative of the game master, and then you sit down and you want to start changing that dynamic, that is your fault. You are at fault for doing that because you don't have the right to impose the way you want to play on the rest of the table. And I think that is the key to it, is that you don't have that entitlement to do that. And if you want to play a game that does that, there are plenty out there. They are not Dungeons & Dragons, and they are certainly not Dungeons & Dragons at my table. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this one. Please sound off in the comments. I would love to hear your thoughts on this topic, about to what extent do players have the right to establish things in the setting, or establish things in the story that don't just emerge out of play. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Do let me know in the comments. Hope you're all having a wonderful, wonderful day, and I'll talk to you all later. Thanks for watching today's video. Please remember to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Below you'll find links to my Patreon, which helps make these videos possible. You'll also find the web store where you can buy my books, and my blog where you'll find all sorts of free downloads and other articles. Thanks, and have a great day.